Frontiers Unchained.
Welcome at Frontiers Unchained. Today we have a very special guest, Ian Balina, who's gonna tell us a bit more about his journey into the crypto space. A lot to unpack there, so let's get started. Ian, can you tell us a bit more about your background?
Yes, pleasure being on. Great to be here. Always eager to just kind of talk more about crypto, about our story, the journey, and hopefully inspire others.
Awesome. So let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us a bit more about your background?
So I was born in Kampala, Uganda. I came to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. My dad came to the U.S. to do his PhD at Penn State. He was a civil engineer. Brought the whole family with him. After about 4.5 years, he graduated and found work outside of Baltimore, Maryland, in Columbia, Maryland. So pretty much I've been in the DMV, the Washington, D.C. metro area my whole life. So D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. I went to high school in Maryland, then college in D.C., went to the George Washington University, where I did my bachelor's and master's in computer engineering. So I've always been an avid lover of computers and technology and engineering in general. And from there, I graduated, did some contracting work briefly as a software developer, then worked at Deloitte as an IT consultant briefly for about 3 months, then ended up getting an offer at IBM. So I kind of figured out very quickly consulting was not for me because I was getting penalized for finishing early, right? And in consulting, you have to bill by the hour. So that was not really my line of work. So I ended up shifting over and joining IBM. I was there for 4 years. I joined IBM for 3 years as a technical sales engineer, basically as the engineer in the field, helping IBM close sales deals. In essence, doing demos for clients, doing proof of work concepts, doing basically POCs, workshops, and other things like that to help progress the sales deal. And then my last year, I crossed over to the dark side and figured out there was a lot more money in sales. So I switched from being a sales engineer to an actual account exec covering all of North America, basically as a North America analytics sales evangelist. So I was helping sell the IBM Watson and IBM Cloud, and also IBM Analytics in general. So that was great. I got into crypto actually while I was at IBM back in 2016. And then 1 year later, I ended up quitting my job to go full-time in crypto as an angel investor.
Can you tell us a bit more why you actually chose to go into crypto and how that process went?
Yes. So the whole time, even though I was working, I had jobs, whether IBM, Deloitte, I've always been an entrepreneur since the beginning. My first ever job was as an entrepreneur. I was building websites back in high school and college for my uncle, for his school. And I've always wanted to kind of be self-employed, to always have my own business. So no matter what, I always viewed basically having a job as a means to an end to being self-employed, right? I grew up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And my favorite one is actually the Investor Quadrant. But anyway, a friend of mine from my DC college days reached out to me wanting to get introduced to the IBM blockchain team. And I tried to qualify him saying, why do you care so much about this blockchain thing? Because to me at the time, I thought Bitcoin and blockchain was basically Silk Road, the dark web, all these nefarious characters that should just be locked up. But he kind of opened my eyes and showed me he was basically a Bitcoin developer. And he was actually basically investing in crypto. It was at the time he told me he was making over 100% buying and holding Bitcoin and Ethereum. And to me, I've always had a high appetite for risk. At that point in time, I was doing penny stocks. Right? So to me, I figured, oh, wow, you can actually make money on Bitcoin. And there's actual technology on all this. So that got me going down this rabbit hole. And that same day, I hopped onto Coinbase, purchased my first Bitcoin. Basically, I put in $100 into Bitcoin and $100 into Ethereum because I was still testing the waters. Bitcoin was at around $850 to $900. Ethereum was between $8 to $9. And I just bought Ethereum just because I thought it was cheaper, right? Just to add it in there, why not? And this is kind of history. But really, it was just him showing me that this is not just Silk Road. There's actual utility. There's actual innovation here. And for me, I've always wanted to have skin in the game. So I thought putting in what I was willing to lose at that point in time, only $200 into crypto, would make me more eager to learn more about it. And then over the course of 3 months or so, I began just learning more about crypto. So I got 2 books. Any new field I enter, I always try to find the best books at the time. So at the time, it was the Age of Cryptocurrency and Digital Gold. Read those 2 books, and that gave me belief in crypto. And then after 3 months, began basically dollar cost averaging into crypto. I went from $200 to $2,500. So I did more of that into crypto, buying Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that same week, Ethereum announced the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, basically getting companies like JP Morgan, Microsoft, all these big banks on Wall Street, basically giving this big vote of credibility to Ethereum. And the price of Ether went from like $10 to like, I think $40 or something, or $25. But basically, it was the fastest money I'd ever made in my life, right? I basically had like almost a 4x return in like 2 weeks. And at that time, I was also very, very active as an entrepreneur, as a hustler. I had an Airbnb business I was doing. I had an Amazon FBA business I was doing. I was also trying to do other stuff online, e-commerce. So while working a day job, so I had so many different places I was spinning that I realized, hey, this crypto thing is actually making me the most money with the least amount of effort. It was basically passive investing. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me stop all these other side hustles where I have to drive to an Airbnb, change the sheets, do X, Y, Z, right? Or pick up packages for Amazon FBA to send to the warehouse. I'm like, no, let me just go all in on crypto, because at that point in time, it was January 2017. My goal was to quit my job at IBM by end of the year, right? Basically to burn the boats, right? That famous expression. So I literally burned the boats. I took my car back, moved out of my nice place, moved back into my parents' place, took all the money I was basically saving and put it all into crypto, because I just figured this as really my way out of the corporate world and really becoming financially independent. And within 9 months, I was able to quit my job at IBM and go full-time in crypto by September 2017. I would say I began dollar cost averaging heavily in 2017, right? It was basically January 2017, almost every, I would say, well, it wasn't every month, it was maybe every 2 or 3 months, and then working in sales. We kind of joke it's either feast or famine, right? Because basically your base pay is very, very low, and then out of nowhere, you get this large commission checks, right? At one point in time, I had like this 6-figure commission check that came in end of the year, right? So then taking that capital and putting that into crypto. But for me, it was more so just trying to be consistent with putting money in it. But then I was living and breathing crypto. So I'd work 9 to 5 IBM, then basically 6 till midnight or maybe 3 a.m. crypto. Crypto was my other job, basically. Full time, me and my buddies, we had this Telegram group that was initially just a bunch of friends just talking crypto. Actually, it was just a bunch of friends talking business and just like different side hustles, entrepreneur stuff. But after all, it became just purely crypto. So it became eventually just a crypto Telegram group. Right? Ended up being about 10 to 15 people, mainly from the DC area, or who are all friends with people in the DC area. And then it just kind of grew up and ended up going national and then global.
Amazing. And were these already friends before you started the entrepreneurial group, let's say, or were these people you actually met through being an entrepreneur?
Yes. So pretty much almost all of them initially were friends from DC, and like we just kind of hang out from just either friends of friends, and then part of the move, like for example, Ugo was in the group. Me and Ugo went to college together freshman year at GW. So he was in the group. Then some other people were in the group from just meeting from our travels. And then from after, I would say probably spring of 2017, we went to our first conference, Token Summit in New York, our first crypto conference, I mean. And it was very eye-opening. For the first time, we actually saw people in real life who actually use crypto, who actually became financially independent through crypto, right? So all of those who we kind of looked up to, we added them to the group. So for example, well, this was more down the line after lots of conferences, but at one point in time, we had Vitalik in the group, right? We had Vinny in the group. We had all these other kind of founders. Anybody interesting would meet, I would add them to this Telegram group.
Nice. Where were you actually getting that information off to get a view on crypto?
Big resource. Back then, not too many channels. An OG channel back then was Tizen. Yeah. Tizen and Leon Fu. There were some crypto traders. So they were doing about, I think, daily, almost weekly videos on crypto and investing. Yeah. And they kind of have a value investing approach. So that was very helpful. And then the rest of the thing was just researching, right? And then eventually ended up making my own videos on crypto because my audience was asking on crypto. So because I had a channel creating content on Airbnb, Amazon FBA, basically just entrepreneurial spirit and side hustles. And then I was on the side, I told people I was doing crypto. They said, hey, make a video on crypto. So I did. I made one on Bitcoin. Then I ended up doing one on ICOs, basically how people were making millions investing in ICOs, because that's what I learned from the conference. I mean, people who were in the Ethereum ICO, who were in the MadeSafe ICO, who became millionaires, basically. And I said, wow, this is actually what the gold rush is. So I made content on that, and that ended up going viral and kind of built me a following.
Yeah. I mean, those videos were quite popular, right? Before starting this podcast, a lot of people reached out, actually say, are you speaking with the real Ian Balina? So you still got quite a presence on that end. What actually inspired you to accept of the ICO boom and all that? Because later on you provided more data-driven kind of content where you really look at token projects from an analytical side and give some more guidance toward that. How's that journey actually from your start of the ICO boom to actually where you're coming now with content you're providing?
Yeah, I mean, back then I was essentially documenting the process. A very common phrase from Gary Vaynerchuk says, basically just whatever journey you're going through, document that through content creation, and people will get value from that. So for me, I was basically documenting my learnings in crypto. I began documenting basically a spreadsheet because I worked at IBM in data and analytics. And I figured, okay, let me try to apply analytics to crypto investing. And I basically just put together the spreadsheet, went through the analytics to try to find what are the metrics that matter for project to do well. So this spreadsheet, then I just documented me researching and filling out a spreadsheet thinking it would be boring. And people actually found it valuable, right? Very educational. Then they asked, hey, can we get access to the same spreadsheet? Because we want to do our own research, our own analytics. I said, yeah, sure. So it was just a simple Google Sheet document, made it public. People would get it, copy and paste it. And next thing you know, well, actually that same month I made the whole video public with the spreadsheet. The top picks on the spreadsheet ended up doing a 10x, and I think there are two 10x's or one 10x and one 20x. It was like 0x protocol and District 0x launched, and then people were like, "Whoa, this spreadsheet is like magic." Then word of mouth kind of ended up going viral over the course of like a few months, eventually to a point where I had to take it down, and now we basically have what is now the evolution of the spreadsheet, tokenmetrics.com, which is basically now applying AI and machine learning towards helping people find hidden gems in crypto to invest and trade in. And now our content is now more about that. It's more data driven. It's more refined. We now have a whole research team, an arm that basically goes through and helps us create a system to find these projects. And we'll try to make it as
We'll dive a bit more detail into that later on in the conversation. But let's get back to like you had your day job. At some point, you reach a certain amount where you feel comfortable actually to quit the job because it was actually quite a good job to be honest. What we're hearing from you, and then you pivoted full time in crypto. How did it feel once you quit? How was that experience? Maybe you can share that with us as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was the best move I ever made. It was risky. People thought I was crazy because here I am, basically a black guy, 27 years old, at IBM, right? Basically giving up a job that people twice my age would kill for, right? My last year at IBM, I made over almost $500,000, right? Now but the thing is, in sales, it's very cutthroat, right? Like my base pay was 85K, right? So it's basically for most of the year, basically living. It's basically a famine, and then depending on how well you do with your sales deals that close, which come in maybe every 6 months, then you have these large commission checks coming, right? So, and then you also have the whole corporate world and everything, right? And how everything is very institutionalized. And the way I saw it was this: where I was trying to go, I had goals of basically traveling the world. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been into travel. And I could either wait until I get promoted into a worldwide sales role, which could take time, or I could just do this crypto thing and really just be out on my own. And what really inspired me was I was on vacation in Tokyo, Japan. It was basically, I left like end of December, like last week of December 2016, stayed there for 10 days all the way into first week of January 2017. And even though I was there on vacation, I went with actually a colleague of mine and my friend Ugo, and we were there, and I was like, I felt it was my first time in Asia. I felt on top of the world. Literally, I was 60 floors up in the Ritz-Carlton with a nice skyline view of Tokyo, Japan. And I said, why do I have to go back? I mean, technically the visa is 90 days. And that's when it dawned on me, it didn't matter how much money I was making in the corporate world. I still had vacation days and a company and a boss controlling my time and my freedom. So basically, I was just a highly paid employee, right? Who still did not have autonomy in his life. And I said, I want to be, at that point in time, I said, I'm going to go back home, burn the boats. So that way I can be financially independent and I can travel wherever I want, stay however long I want. And ended up doing that, right? So that Tokyo was the inspiration. Went back home, burned the boats, right? It's a famous quote from the Spanish explorer, I believe, Hernan Cortez, who basically did what nobody had done before. He took his Spanish army to Mexico and was able to, I believe, go to the land of El Dorado, if I'm correct, and find gold. And he got the smallest army ever to do it by burning the boats and telling them, either we die or we conquer. There's no middle ground. And so I kind of did that with my life. I said whatever was my middle ground, I got rid of it. My home, my car. And I told myself, the worst case, if I peter out and this does not work out, I just end up on my parents' couch playing video games, right? So once I reframed it in that perspective, I said the rock bottom is not really that rock bottom. That's just like high school, all right? So that allowed me to go swing for the home runs. So I left my job at IBM when I had about $250,000 in crypto, because I figured that was good enough. Because people kind of joke that I'm a permeable, right? I always think it's going to, basically a moon boy. I always think it's going to keep on going up and up, because long term it ends up always going up. Well, if you're long-term bullish in technology, right? So for me, I said I had $250,000 in crypto. I said, okay, that's good enough. I don't really have many expenses, right? Everything was, my car, my home was gone, so I could just travel the world. And one of the reasons why I left also was I was missing out on some great private cell investments because I was working at IBM, right? We're working my day job, right? Because sometimes we'd still have to hop on calls with these projects to do the research, ask questions, to invest, right? So I was in a private cell of Chainlink. I was in a private cell of Zero X Protocol. Well, not private cell, but public cell of Zero X Protocol and some other projects. Some early projects. Filecoin, right? So some of these calls that ended up doing very well, I would miss them because I'm at work in a work meeting. But once I left, it was September 2017. I ended up basically traveling the world. I got invited back to Japan. It was, I believe, December 2017. A project called Telcoin invited us. I covered them. We were part of their private cell and investors in them. Invited us to their offices in Japan. So went there. It was beautiful, kind of coming full circle in basically about a year. Then the interesting thing, me and my buddies, me, Ugo, and Hen, all three of us basically became crypto millionaires at the dinner table when we pulled out a crypto portfolio. Right? And all three of us were basically Black from the DC area, even though Ugo moved to Denver at the time. And we're like, whoa, we actually made it. Like, we hit our goals. Right? And that was a very pinnacle moment and kind of very sentimental to me because it happened in Tokyo, the place where I burned the boats. So I had the idea to burn the boats.
At some point, you pivoted away from your current job. You started analyzing token projects, creating content, nurturing certain relationship to actually get access to those token projects. And maybe we can dive a bit more into that. How did you nurture your network or those relationships? Did you have any strategy there, or did you...
Yeah, I mean, initially I was just a stranger. So, because by going full time in crypto, I had a lot more time to travel to conferences, and that's where most of the deal flow and projects were happening. So my first ever 100x project, basically what project goes returns 100 times your money, I was Icon, and I got them from traveling to San Francisco. Basically, I believe we were in town for the Filecoin Summit. It was a Filecoin. It was early back then. They had this conference, this annual conference. I believe we went to that. Then I ended up doing an investor meetup. And I think there was some other legal crypto conference maybe we were going to. And then we reached out. I think somebody in our community, in our private community, at the time shared Icon, said, hey, check it out, interesting project. I looked into it, then found out the founder, Min Kim, was in San Francisco. So just reached out and ended up having lunch with him, chatted for like, I think about an hour, and then ended up getting into the private sale. Then the rest is history. So I would say just kind of more of a boots on the ground, finding out different people, staying in touch, or just even reaching out cold directly via the email, right, or telegrams. And that's always been a good way to kind of network and find different interests.
If you look back, what do you think were the most, or at least the biggest drivers of success from your end? Was that network? Was that analytical skills? Or was it just you as an entrepreneur being there and actually doing some side hustles?
Yeah, I would say it was all the above, but to boil it down, I was motivated. I was hungry, like to a point where I was maniacal about it. Like I mentioned, I was working 9 to 5 and basically from 6 to like midnight, sometimes 3 a.m., just doing crypto, right? I mean, it got bad to a point sometimes I was actually falling asleep in meetings because I was up all night doing crypto, right? Like it was that bad, right? Like I was just that focused on making it in crypto, and I burned the boats. I had no plan B. This was my plan A. This was the only way this was going to work. So I had to make it work.
But at some point, the bear market happens, right? So the ICO days are over and the bear market happens. Did you see that coming, or how did you anticipate on that?
Yeah, honestly, that was my first bear market in crypto. so it's one thing to try to anticipate it. It's a different thing to actually experience it. So for me, I would say I was relatively fine, right? Like I made my gains. I took profit. Now, I think the only thing maybe I would have done differently. Well, one, for those who know the story, I got hacked. I lost $2.5 million from a hack in crypto. So that was not planned, right? And that ended up kind of tossing a curveball into all the plans I had. And then 2, I was also doing a crypto world tour. So we did, in 2018, we did 35 countries in 12 months, right? Because as mentioned, I love travel. So when I travel the world. So initially that began as me and my friend just kind of country hopping for vacation. And then our audience wanted to do meetups. So we began doing meetups. Initially began at meetups at restaurants and bars. Then at one point in time, we had like 50 people come up and we were like, okay, you know what? We have to actually plan ahead and get meeting rooms, which then ended up going to conferences and creating our own conferences. To a point we had over 1,000 people in London. We had over 600 in Amsterdam that came out. It was actually hosted by Etienne at TRCG or TCRG, his fund, or his cup firm. Yeah, Etienne Van Croys. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I would say in crypto, now I've kind of been in 2 cycles, 2 bull and bear markets. You kind of see the pattern now, right? Basically, I tell people about 6 to 12 months prior to Bitcoin halving is a good time to accumulate. And then historically speaking, you have about 15, 16 months of a bull run post Bitcoin halving. And then that ends up being the top, which then means it's time to take profit. So now we kind of know what's happening. I mean, obviously things can change, but I think in a bear market, you have to really, if you're running a company, it's a totally different story, right? Where you have to do layoffs, you have to do furloughs, just trying to manage employees in a very volatile market. It's already volatile being in a startup. When you add crypto to it, it's like 100x more volatile, in my opinion, right?
Yeah. And I guess it's right what you said, right? But also, if you compare the crypto markets to the traditional markets, I think maybe 1 month in crypto is like a year in TradeFi. At least that's what the common the words out there. But maybe if we dive into that as well a bit more in your investment thesis, maybe you could walk us through the steps of your process and also how you look at different kind of opportunities or token projects.
Yeah. So beginning at the top, I would say more so a value investor, right? I believe strongly in value investing. One of my inspirations, besides Warren Buffett, is especially Howard Marks in the traditional world, right? Basically finding value in places people will least likely find value, right? And people kind of might find it funny that I think we're value investors in low cap altcoins. But yeah, I think that's the case. That's basically long-term venture investing, but in crypto. So our thesis is basically we find projects that have great fundamentals and great technology that are undervalued relative to the market, right? And when it comes to fundamentals, our process is we go through different data points. such as the team's background, where they come from, right? So at a high level, people kind of intuitively know this, right? Somebody, for example, that just left Facebook, Meta, where they're building the Libra project for 2 years to then found their own blockchain, like Aptos or Sui, has a better track record than somebody who just walked up to the street to launch a cryptocurrency, right? So we try to make it as objective as possible. So we'll say anybody who's been at a company that has either gone public with over $1 billion market cap and worked there for more than 2 years, or anybody who's worked for a top 25 market cap crypto project for more than 1 year, right? It's kind of trying to automate it in that aspect, right? So the team, the tokenomics, right? So basically, what's the total supply? How many tokens are actually in the market? Is it a low float project, or are most of the tokens already in the market where there'll be little sell pressure, right? So basically, the tokenomics is a factor as well. The size of the community. So we track their Telegram, Twitter, Reddit, and just try to see the growth of that project over time. That can basically tell you where people are going. Also the sentiment of that project. And then on the technology side, we have blockchain engineers that go through and actually do our own code reviews on the project, right? So especially on the venture side with Token Metrics Ventures, we reach out to projects proactively during the research process, and we try to get access to their code base, even if it's not released. Typically, they'll have us do an NDA. We'll go through all that. But the main thing is in crypto, there are lots of products that are just either forks, where there's no actual innovation, or it's just an outright scam, right? So you have to be able to find out what products have technically sound code and technology. And we do that by going through the code. So looking for things such as what's the quality of the code, right? How well is it documented? Is this something that's very innovative? It is something developers actually want to use. So we go through and basically rate it based on fundamentals and rate it based on technology. And then we kind of merge the two together to basically give it a holistic grade. And then we measure it in terms of the valuation, right? So for example, in a bear market, our company was able to find and share with our customers and audience Canto, right? So Canto is a project that is basically an Ethereum EVM, Ethereum virtual machine. Basically, it's Ethereum on Cosmos. Cosmos is an internet of blockchains. But looking at other data points, even on-chain data, which is a factor as well, it had, versus its competition, Evmos, which was basically a product was doing the same thing, kind of dying. Evmos had, I think, 4 times the valuation, while Canto had over 70 times more assets on chain, over 70 times more value, more TVL. So to us, that was a huge data point that was in a huge discrepancy. And looking at the actual tech, even though Canto was a fork of Evmos, because Evmos, I believe, was the first one, Canto had ended up getting the community's vote, right? Because they basically did a fair launch. Evmos kind of messed up, I think with VCs or whatever, people kind of abandoned the project, but the market was still mispricing it. So to us, we saw that as a huge opportunity in a bear market, and it ended up doing a 7x in a bear market. So things like that, right? One of the example is, actually the best example is Polygon. So mid Polygon in our travels back in 2018 and at Hyderabad, India, we were there for a conference. One of our friends, fellow investors in our Telegram group, reached out to us about the product they had just recently invested in. They were in the seed round of Polygon. They came to the pit competition we were holding. They ended up winning, and the rest is history. But I noticed that our blockchain engineers, typically we send them a bunch of projects. They might go through 25, 40 projects in a month, right? Or yeah, I think at that time they're doing lots of projects. But anyway, they go through those projects. Typically they just move on. But we noticed that 3 to 6 months later, they're still building their own projects on the side on Polygon, Matic network at the time. So to us, that was a huge vote of confidence. 2 developers of ours are doing their own side projects on this protocol. There's something here. And at the time, they ended up, I think 1 year later, they did a Binance Launchpad event at about 20 million FDV valuation, I believe, if I'm correct. And we gave Polygon a tech score or code review score of 88% at the time. Right? For comparison, projects like Polkadot and Ethereum received 94, 95%, right? But they had valuations of the billions. Here you have a project with a $20 million valuation getting at 88%. That's a huge delta. Right? So to us, that told us, okay, this project is very, very undervalued relative to where it is. And the rest is history.
But let's quantify what you just said there. So how many projects do you typically see, and how much actually do get an investment from you guys? And in addition to that, maybe you can also dive into like how big the team is and tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so Tokenmetrics as a whole, we have about, stuff is always changing, but we have over 40 people globally on the staff. Then on the fund side, we have, I would say, under 10 people on the staff. There's some overlap, some staff on both, basically the research arm. On the research side, so our fundamental team, basically we first do the fundamental analysis, then projects that pass that end up getting sent to our engineers to do code reviews on. So the fundamental team probably is now looking at we try to target 30 projects a week. So if they go through 30 in a week, maybe like I would say 5-ish. I'll say slightly between 5 to 7, maybe. But let's say that the top 5 of those projects we send to our engineers to then do code reviews on, right? So let's say 6, right? So our engineers might end up doing 6 code reviews a week. And out of those, we might end up investing in maybe one of them. But that's not the case. So all the time. So we've made about 15 investments on the fund side in the last 1 year or so. So it's averaging up to about slightly over 1 project a month. So to kind of bring numbers into how many we see in a month, so we're probably seeing over 100 projects in a month and investing in basically 1. But then you also have some other months where we're very, very active. And that's actually primarily from conferences. Conferences have the best deal flow. So we went to ETH Denver, and we ended up making, I believe, 3 or 4 investments just from ETH Denver alone. I always tell people your network is your net worth.
Yeah, that's a really strong point there. So yeah, if you dive a bit more into token metrics, I mean, we already touched about a few points there, and you also told us a bit more about the inspiration why you started. Can you maybe give us like a high level idea of what you guys do and how you guys approach it?
Yeah. So Tokenmetrics at a high level is using AI, machine learning, and analytics to help crypto investors become smarter investors and help them build wealth in crypto. So early on, initially, we're doing that primarily through providing crypto ratings. So helping people, so in the same process I mentioned earlier, people who maybe want to kind of do the same or have somebody do that for them, we provide a platform where we provide the data-driven research to them. So think of it kind of like a Morningstar for crypto, or kind of like a Moody's or credit rating for crypto. But in this case, it's a rating on the fundamentals and the technology of projects. And then we've added other elements. For example, added indices. Now customers can go on our platform and view model portfolios for different exchanges. So if you say, I only want to look at a portfolio for trading on Coinbase, these are the projects that have the best ratings, and this is how we would allocate it based on this exchange and different models. So we have that, but our long-term vision is actually to build a general intelligence for crypto. So actually, end of this month, we're doing an alpha launch of a Tokenmetrics GPT or ChatGPT version for crypto using our own data, where customers can go and basically via the interface chat and ask different questions, such as what's a good cryptocurrency to trade today, or what's a good cryptocurrency investment, or what's the next 100x coin, which is a very popular question. And then using data, right? It's all data driven, right? So we'll go through and give you a data driven thesis as to why these coins are good to trade and why, right? So we'll tell you, for example, this token is good to trade today because the trader grade is 80% and it's changed over 100% in the last 1 day, the last 24 hours, and it has this Sharpe ratio and this max drawdown, right? So going through and kind of giving you the quantitative data points as to why it's a good trade or investment. So that's coming out soon. Then we also plan to add a trading bot, allowing people to actually use their own exchange accounts to connect via an API key and trade the signals and ratings we have on our platform.
And you're also an entrepreneur, right? With Tokenmetrics. What are one of the biggest challenges you are currently facing in the crypto space? as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say the bear market is definitely the biggest challenge in crypto. Trying to run a business while being in crypto, right? Because the market is basically goes in cycles, right? We launched it in the bear market, went through a bull run, and now back in the bear market, right? And now kind of people in crypto kind of go away, right? The eyeballs go away, everything kind of goes away, and trying to keep people's attention and eyeballs in a time where crypto is basically going down. We have crypto regulation, the SEC, Binance, Coinbase, CFTC, right? It's like crypto is getting pummeled from all angles for like the last 2 years. And now we have like the Bitcoin having to look forward to and potentially the next cycle of a bull run. But in the meantime, in this lull, trying to keep and maintain people in a bear market has always been a challenge because sometimes people just want to go away and come back later.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges you see out there for retail investors in the bear market?
Oh, challenges for retail investors in a bear market. Not to FOMO, not to chase the hype, the meme coins like Pepe. And I would say, if anything, to manage risk. That's where it's been a constant in every cycle. You have people that come in, basically buy the top or put in their whole life savings into crypto or one asset, and it ends up coming down. But I'll say risk management. I always tell people, if you're trading, don't put more than 1% into any trade. That way you can always live again with your trades. And to manage risk, right? If you're more of a long-term investor, we like to kind of say don't put more than 5% into any crypto asset and basically diversify and think long-term. But if anything, I tell people the biggest challenge is to manage risk. Right? People want to chase the shiny new token, the one that's going up 100%, but always have a framework and a checklist you go through prior to making any trade or investment, and always know your entry point and your exit points.
Yeah. Because would you identify yourself more as a trader or as an investor?
Investor, definitely investor.
Yeah. Yes.
But even then, I always have entries and exit points. Me more so based on valuation. So, for example, like with Radical Polygon, I knew the technology was good based on our research and ratings, and I knew, okay, where should this be priced in the market? At that point in time, it was on like page 2 or 3 of CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko, right? And I said, this is a top 20 market cap project, right? So that was the target. I was waiting for the market to realize that, and it ended up doing it. Right now, Polygon is like top 10, right? But as it gets closer, then you begin taking profits, and then once it hits that target, once it broke through the top 20 barrier, then I took a lot of money off the table.
How do you see the future of crypto going forward? What really interests you?
Yes, so there are a few narratives we're watching or have already invested in. One of those, I think, is definitely scaling. I think we're seeing lots of L2s, but especially ZK EVMs or rollups, right? So you have ZK rollups, optimistic rollups. We made 2 investments in a company called, 2 investments in 2 companies. One is called Obscura. It's basically a hybrid of optimistic and ZK rollups for L2 on Ethereum, so Ethereum EVM, and the other is all of VM, also kind of doing the same thing, but basically it's a ZK VM. Then we're also keeping an eye out on AI and ML. Now, this is relatively early, but we're looking at different projects in the space, trying to see, okay, what's the next? Because we feel AI is now here to stay. We've had this 0 to 1 moment with ChatGPT. Now, how it's just going to be done in the Web3 world, right? So we're keeping an eye out on that narrative. Cross-chain interoperability. Now there's so many different L1s, L2s. How do you connect all of them? So you now have L0s, layer zeros, right? So from Cosmos, very bullish on the Cosmos ecosystem, beginning lots of developers versus Polkadot. Lots of traction. Our team was down in Cosmoverse in Colombia, South America last year. And we just saw lots of companies down there. XLR is one that we're keeping an eye on strongly. We made an investment in a company in India called Dojima Network. Very early stage, but kind of gives us Polygon vibes. Team has been building for the last 2 years, very, very dedicated. We're also keeping an eye out on account abstraction. We think that would help bring in the next billion users, making it a lot more efficient and easier to use crypto wallets. For example, in MetaMask, currently you have to go through several transactions just to do one transaction, right? So basically, you have to give the wallet access to sign, then you have to approve, then sign and transfer. But now you can kind of just click one button and it does everything. It's kind of like not showing you how the sausage is made, right? So that'll make it a lot more user friendly with crypto applications. So we're keeping an eye out on that. And then there are always other narratives coming in and out in crypto, but I think those are the main ones we're keeping an eye on.
This may be going back a bit more in the conversation. Once you mentioned you were hacked, can you tell us a bit more how that happened and how important security is in crypto? Is if they hack you, that you can basically lose everything.
Yeah. So basically, I was hacked. I was traveling the world, and I kept my private key in Evernote, or basically an online kind of account to access, even though it was encrypted. It wasn't encrypted well enough. They would have just hack it. They did it by just basically resetting my 2FA, right? So I'm sorry, they hacked it by hacking my Gmail, which then had they used to access my Evernote account. Right? And my Gmail, the 2FA on there was basically, you could just do forgot password. It would send it to my college email address, which had no 2FA. Right? So they kind of used a chain of different sequences to basically get access to my account. So that was a huge learning lesson. The good news is I was able to actually recover the funds thanks to the help of the FBI and DOJ. And now the person is basically in prison and is being tried, or rather awaiting trial. Right. But the good thing is they were able to get the funds back. I got them back. I was hacked in 2018, May 2018, got the funds back January 2021. So basically about 3 years. So it was a very long process. And I was very, very fortunate. I would say like 99% of people don't get the money back. So security-wise, now I use everything. I use hardware wallets with Ledger, and now on the fund side, we have other tools like Fireblocks and others with MPC computing. Basically, and then also multi-sig wallets. So there are lots of different ways to secure your crypto, but just know that you have to take security very seriously in crypto.
Never 100% safe, but you can at least do your best, right? To make it as difficult as possible to acquire your private keys or actually be hacked. And a lot of tools out there.
Even the same thing with banks, right? Your money is never 100% safe in the bank. Bank employee can go in there if they're really bad and just take your money, right?
Yeah, especially we've seen that the last few months with all the regional banks in the US, but also in the frontier markets. There are a lot of banks out there where you also have that risk of happening. So your money is never safe, but with crypto, at least it's in your own hands. So you need to take ownership of that and really embrace that regarding security, at least. Podcast is coming near, so maybe some final words from your end. Do you have any?
Yes, for aspiring blockchain investors, have a system, stick to it, and then always look for ways to refine the system through your experiences. So whatever the target is, just kind of refine. Basically, it's kind of like science, right? It's like a scientific method, right? You have a hypothesis, you have a system, you go through it, you get feedback, use that to then optimize the system, and you keep on going through that. Then over time, you just get better as an investor. Then as an entrepreneur, kind of the same thing. Definitely go out there, network, build a team, plan ahead to make sure that if you're a crypto entrepreneur, understand that the market goes in cycles, right? When it's a bull run, everything's on top of the world. When it's a bear market, it looks like it's the end of the world, but just kind of have the fortitude to persevere and just know the market goes in cycles, right? So kind of don't get too high, don't get too low.
Well, thanks for that advice and those insights you shared with us. Hopefully, our listeners can take away and pick and choose what they think is useful. And really, thanks for taking the time, Ian.
All right, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.